Hey, Alabama basketball fans, this is Michael Southern from Tide Hoops History, and this is episode 3 of the Blue Collar Podcast. And as always, we are joined by Emilee Smarr of the Tuscaloosa News and Tidesports.com, and she is fresh back from a journey to the Big Apple. Emilee, welcome back. How are you doing tonight?
I am better now that I'm finally out of Newark.
Yes, there
I
are much
made
better
it.
places. Yeah, there's much better places to be than Newark, New Jersey. I will say that.
Yeah.
Um, all right. So you had a nice big trip. You saw a lot of good things up there. I want to get your post-game reactions of what you saw from this team as far as their 103-96 victory over number 5 St. John's, not only against number 5 St. John's, but in their house. Alabama went into their house, took care of business. What were the things that you liked the most that you saw from this team on Saturday?
One, Holloway looks so much better than he did last year, which I know that he was obviously major for this team from the art, but just how much better he looked going to the rim, I think is going to do a lot for this team moving forward. And I was really happy to see that improvement come into play on Saturday. Um, it was obviously just an offensive clinic, shooting 60.9% from the floor. Can't really, I mean, you can't ask for better than that, especially if you're playing for Nate Oats, but it doesn't get much better than that. Um, really just dominating those pick and roll schemes, absolutely eliminating St. John's off of the dribble. And I think creating hesitation to knowing when to take their shots, even though they're still trying to play as quickly as possible. So that way they weren't getting too wild with it, limiting those turnovers. I think that those were all things that, Nate obviously wanted to see happen. But I also liked that we got some new looks on what this defense can do. Obviously they're still gritty, they still have a lot of hustle. But, there was one point right before halftime where they blitzed the ball handler. And even though there was a foul called on it, ultimately, it still created a turnover and it helps Alabama come out with a 6 point lead coming out of the half. So I think it was really fun to see everything that this team, obviously it's not everything, it's only game 2, but the potential that this team has moving forward, not just offensively, because as Nate Oats says every year, Alabama is going to have a better shooting team than it did the year before. But I really do think with what we saw against St. John's that this team might actually be closing the gap on defense.
I never would have thought, and this is a great testament to what the offense did. I never would have imagined Alabama would have had 7 turnovers. I really would have thought they would have been more around 14 or 15. And if they would have had that, I would have been happy. The fact that they only had 7 to me is incredible. And the fact that they shot 30% from three, still scored 103 points. I never thought those were the stats that we were going to see post game. So really surprised. And look, you said it about Aiden Holloway. He's bulked up a little bit. He looks tougher. And look, he made 2 3 pointers, but he didn't shoot a great percentage, but he made 7 2 point buckets. So he was driving in there. I would really like the creativity. Let me ask one other question on the offense.
Yeah.
Are we already seeing the Chris Fleming effect after 2 games?
I still feel like this is quintessential Alabama, if you will. But with the way that they are finishing around the rim and getting there, I definitely do think that we're seeing a little bit more of that NBA flair that Chris Fleming brings for sure.
Now, we talked about this before game with the 3 injuries that everyone was concerned about hitting into St. John's. So 2 out of the 3 played, which we kind of thought might be the case. Obviously, Keitenn
Exactly what we
Bristow, yeah, yeah, you're right. And Keitenn Bristow did not play. I know it's still tonight is only Tuesday. They don't play until Thursday. Is there any more updates or insight about the status of Keitenn and the fact that he was walking around in a boot is not a good sign?
We normally do it day before. So I think that we'll probably get the latest update on that. And bet your money, if there is an SID watching this, just know the question's coming. Um, Jalil Bethea was spotted on TikTok last night dancing freely in his socks without a boot. Now, is that what you have to be able to do to play Division 1 basketball? No, you do need that to get some NIL apparently, but not to play D1 basketball. So that's not an official injury update, but I don't know the last time that we have seen this man courtside without a boot. And initially, I know that Adam Zagoria at one point he said that he had heard from his sources that Aiden was supposed to be back around St. John's, getting closer to that Illinois push. Um, Obviously, we still haven't gotten a status update from Oats on how that doctor's appointment that he said that Jalil was going to have went. but tomorrow is the perfect time to ask a question about that. So either we get the incredibly PR watered down answer, which isn't much of an answer at all, or we find out when he's actually going to come back. So
Well, it's amazing to think with the way the backcourt played against St. John's, how they dominated. You're still sitting on someone waiting to come in who's a five-star talent that we haven't had an opportunity to see yet. So this Alabama team's not full strength. That's what's incredible. They went up and
yeah,
did that, and they're still down two players that everyone feels are going to be major contributors as the season comes on. So you've got one big man and another guard waiting to jump into the mix. All right, let's go ahead and focus on the task at hand. You've got number two Purdue based on the AP poll, number one Purdue based on the coaches poll, which I know you said the Tuscaloosa News goes by now because they're not associated with AP
the
anymore.
correct poll.
Yeah, so you will be saying that Alabama's playing the number one ranked team.
I will.
All the historical references I did were referencing the AP poll, so I'll take the other side and I'll still go with number two. Regardless, this is the highest ranked non-conference opponent that Alabama has ever hosted in Coleman Coliseum. So it is a big game. I don't think there's any way to understate that fact. Now, what do you think or how do you feel about the significance of what's going to happen on Thursday with number two Purdue? Look, this is a reverse of last year. Alabama was number two. They go into Purdue, run into a raucous environment, and get upset. Do we have the possibility? Are we going to be able to give the crowd support and reverse the tables on Purdue this Thursday night?
Obviously, there is a very different venue that Purdue has, but
Absolutely.
the crowd noise in Coleman, there's just as much pop that can come out of there. Coleman may not sway, but it can rock. And I think that we'll definitely see that come Thursday. But, isn't this one of the last two non-conference opponents that Alabama played that was that highly ranked? Wasn't Purdue one of them in 2009?
They might have been number 10, number nine or number
I think it
10.
was top 10.
Yeah. The highest ranked opponent Alabama's played non-conference would have been Baylor number four back in 2022. So that was when they had the Big 12 SEC challenge. So Baylor came in as number four, and that was a January game, I believe. And Alabama upset them or beat them. As far as like any pre-conference schedule, because those were always during the middle of the SEC schedule. And then that was 2009. That was also the night that Mark Ingram won the Heisman Trophy, because I remember they broadcast that there at Coleman when they had the announcement for Mark Ingram. And then Purdue came in. They had like Robbie Hummel. But that was a good Purdue team. That was. I think you're right. I think it was top 10 on that one.
And it was a
Al
73-65 loss.
Yeah,
So
that's correct.
Alabama has not just revenge to get a hold of for last year, but also if you want to take it all the way back to 2009.
Let's talk about matchups, because you and I talked about this in the preview to St. John's. And if I remember correctly, I think I even brought this out that I really thought of this really difficult three-game stretch of St. John's, Purdue, and Illinois. From a physical matchup standpoint, I actually liked Alabama's matchup against St. John's simply because they're not overwhelmed in the front court.
Right.
I know we still do not know the status of Trey Kaufman Wren, whether or not he's going to play. He's the one that torched Alabama last year for 26 points. But they've
You're
got
high.
Oscar. Yeah, they got Oscar Clough, 6'11", grown man. He looks like he could be playing in the NBA. He looks so old.
That's a
And
big
don't,
boy.
and don't forget, they have got Daniel Jacobson, 7'4", coming off the bench as a shot blocker. So I have my concerns when it comes to the front court. I do not have concerns about the back court. How do you see this physical matchup between these two?
I do still think, I mean, I do genuinely think that Alabama does have one of the best backcourts in the country. That there's no doubt about that. But Purdue still has Braden Smith, and he's potentially set up to be National Player of the Year. Could be up for an all-time career high in NCAA or all-time NCAA career high in assists. So I definitely think that could be a little sleeper that we got to look out for. But so they're still returning a ton of experience, still returning a ton of talent. Um, and I think that it's not a completely new look from what Alabama saw last year, but this is really a completely different looking Alabama team in comparison. Other than, your obvious LeBaron, Latrell, etc. But the veterans who were there for that game last year aren't going to have that presence on the court this year, with the exception of Latrell. And I think that all this new blood, hopefully Preston Murphy will shout me out for saying that. It won't happen, but I'm going to cross my fingers. But all this new blood for Alabama, I think, is really going to make a big difference, just in the same way that we've seen these freshmen go off and the transfers go off week after week, especially like if Taylor Bowen has another game like he did against St. John's against Purdue, I think the Alabama is going to be just fine at home.
I think with Taylor Bowen, we talked about this too. Message received from Coach Oates. How about that? I mean, as far as how everything worked out for him in that standpoint, I mean,
Received and applied.
yes, that was. I was actually glad to see that. And you talk about this year's team, obviously different than last year's team. Yes, the DNA for this team is completely different than last year, and we were joking about this. At least in my viewpoint, as I look at how this team has played, the personality that I see right now after 2 games, I would say this is the most Nate Oats team ever that he has had at Alabama. This team is definitely a reflection of his personality. They are fearless in your face. They don't give a rip about anything, and they don't mind letting you know about it. And I don't think they're going to be afraid of anything, anyone, or any situation the rest of this year.
No, and just like we were saying last week too, getting a win over St. John's, or if it were a loss, that was really going to set the tone for these next few games. And I think that now that Alabama knows that they can do what nobody really expected of them. I will also just like to say that I went on another podcast and they voted 3-1 against Alabama. I was the one. So I walked away with a win there. But yeah, I think that if this team has the confidence boost that it got from St. John's, I don't think that anybody was surprised that they ended up coming out on top over North Dakota. But coming out of MSG with a win, just, an offensive clinic, like we said, showing that this team is able to play defense. There's a new kind of Alabama that everybody else needs to be worried about, and it's Nate Oats' Alabama. Like now I think that we finally see, like, he's been here for a while, no doubt, but the culture has finally set in. It's that's
Hey, I like we just said, I don't disagree one bit on that one. Right now, if this team keeps going the way it is, and again, it's the attitude that everyone loves. They love the fight that they saw Saturday. I was amazed how much the buzz was going on post game after St. John's for Alabama basketball, because the people who actually watched that game, they left impressed and they liked what they saw. They liked the fight, they liked the effort. There was nothing about that game that you come away with like, man, I don't know about Alabama basketball. You left with such a
exactly.
pot. Yes.
It was just good basketball, truly. Like it's probably the closest that you're going to get to March in November. That
Oh,
was that was my big takeaway there. I mean, and even the major insiders that were there, they they could not speak more volumes of Alabama after that. John Rothstein being one of them. Which obviously he's normally pretty high on Alabama, but I think that praise has taken new heights after seeing what he saw in the arena on
well,
Saturday.
let's just look at this 3 game stretch. It feels like it's a deep NCAA tournament run with the opponents that you're lined up having to play.
He does. And you're on the road like every week.
Yeah, I know. All right, so let's do this. Give me 2 players that have to come up big for Alabama to pull the victory against Purdue.
I'm going to go with Amari Allen again. I know that that's probably not the name that we expected to come off immediately, but when you see what he's done for this team rebounding wise over the last couple games, which there are only two to look at, um, I don't think that we're seeing another freshman pop quite like he is right now, and I think that I think that he needs to keep that momentum rolling into Purdue, and I also let's see. See, I want to say LeBaron, but LeBaron just feels like such a gimme. And he kind of started slow against St. John's. He was 1 for 6 there in the beginning, and then obviously he comes out with another career high. But that being said, Aiden Holloway and Latrell Wrightsell absolutely stole the show there. And just making sure that Alabama didn't fall behind during that first half. So I think that, yeah, give me Trelly. Give me another key Trelly game, just because I genuinely think that, which I know that this is probably like a softball answer to give, but I genuinely mean it wholeheartedly. I think that the veteran experience that he's going to have against this Purdue team, because these are guys that they know how each other work, they know their system really well. I think that Alabama is going to need that so that way they don't get rattled and they stay in control. Because just like Oates said after St. John's, if there were no Trelly and no Aiden Holloway against St. John's, they may not have come back to Tuscaloosa with a win.
Here's the thing that I always view about Latrell Wrightsell, and we talked about how important he is. He is the glue to this team. He seems to be the unifying force for everyone. He's such a stabilizing factor because I guess it's almost like a security blanket when he's out there. Because when
Yeah.
he's out there, you know he's good for a clutch three if you need it. If you need someone to hit a three and it matters the most important part of the game, get the ball to Trelly. He's going to pop it
Mhm.
for you. His defense is underrated as well too. And again, I think he's just got that effervescent personality that the team loves. A healthy Latrell Wrightsell for the entire season, to me, is the catalyst for how far and how successful this Alabama team can
Completely.
truly be. Let's do this. Predictions. So you predicted, say I didn't make a prediction. I probably should have. So let's just go ahead and throw it out there. We'll do it. Alabama Purdue. Does Alabama keep the momentum rolling, and do they take the victory against Purdue?
The tide is rolling. I'm not going to say the two words that I can't say.
No, I know, no, no, no. I know. I'm not gonna.
Oh, no, I know.
I'm not gonna get you in
I'm
trouble
just
on
messing
that.
around. Yeah, but no, the tide is rolling and I don't think that they stop. So
Yeah,
it
I
stops, excuse me, before I get throttled.
well, I'm going to go out there with you too. I think Alabama is going to get, I won't say revenge. They're just going to, I think the momentum's there. I don't see this team letting up by any matter. I think this team, again, they're serious. They also like to have a little fun, and they have an attitude and swagger about them I haven't quite seen before in some of these previous Alabama teams.
I genuinely think that the scariest thing that Nate Oats could have said before this Purdue game was said, and that's that last year's loss at Purdue is embarrassing. That message was communicated thoroughly throughout practice this week, and they probably don't want to know what the other end of embarrassment at home feels like. So
Well, I would say Coach Oates does a good job, just like Nick Saban does, communicating through to his team through the media. I'm sure he also does it at practice as well. I don't think there's much to misunderstand from a Nate Oates practice from the ones I've seen. So I would definitely say mission or message has been received. So looking forward to hopefully a raucous environment. So all I can say out there is to all the season ticket holders, I'm not going to call you fogs, but you know what I mean. Please come out there for the ones who maybe don't come to all the non-conference games. If you're going to come to a non-conference game, this is the one you need to be at. They're going to need everyone to be there Thursday night. They need to make this the most hostile environment possible for Purdue, and they need to keep the momentum rolling before they go to Illinois.
before I go to Illinois, because
Well,
I'm
yeah. So, hey,
yeah.
you're gonna rack up a lot of good frequent flyer travel miles this year. So,
I'm not going to Vegas though, so I will
oh
not be racking
no.
that one up. That's probably for everyone's safety if
Oh.
you wanted the beat reporter to come back intact. So probably a wise decision. But yeah, we'll be watching from my couch while they're in Vegas, but I will be in Chicago.
Okay, fair enough. All right, as we said, Emilee, tell everyone how they can keep up with your good work.
Thank you. Yeah, you guys can of course follow me on Twitter. Well, X, formerly Twitter.
X,
But
yeah.
yeah, whatever. We all know what it is. Emilee_Smarr, Emilee, not a Y. Also, of course, you can go to the TuscaloosaNews.com. All of my articles are there. Just head on over to the sports page. We've always got some new stuff coming out. We'll have some new stuff after pressers tomorrow. And also trying to get started up on Instagram as well. So
Ah, okay.
follow me at Emilee_Smarr_reporter, same spelling. Yeah, you can always find my little video recaps of the game there. I did not do one for St. John's because I had to go to the Ainsworth. I had to participate in debauchery.
I know they had to twist your arm to do that too. I know that was
Oh,
so.
it's so hard.
I know. I know. All right. Well, again, she is Emilee Smarr. I can't thank her enough for joining us. We will keep trying to do as many of these non-conference podcasts as both our schedules allow. Mainly hers. I'm a little more flexible, but she has a full-time job covering the team, so we'll try to work it in whenever her schedule allows. We've got a lot of big non-conference games coming up, and as I always joke, she can't say it, but I can. Roll Tide, and everyone come out to Coleman Thursday night. I cannot ask you enough. Come to Coleman Thursday night. Come loud, come proud, and make it the most intimidating environment possible for Alabama basketball. Because let me tell you, people, they deserve it. So you need to show up and be there for them.
And if you go by Press Row, come say hi.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you can come by and see me at Section Q, row 12, seats 14, 15. Come say hi to me too. So it'll be a fun time. Looking forward to it. Emilee, thanks a lot.
Thank you.